Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Reynolds and I am of course here to read you the next bit of our book, which is The Magic Finger. And before I do that, you might recognise some of the things that I have got with me today. So these two tigers are from our classroom, and so is this sign. This sign normally lives in our reading corner, so I thought it was apt that I would have it with me while I was reading to you today. This tiger, of course, is the one that we adopted at Christmas, and it normally lives just next to our science window. So they are very safely with me. I was also at work on Monday. I was at school, and in our entrance at school, I found this plant, which unfortunately was looking a little bit sorry for itself. So I decided to bring it home, and by some sort of miracle of sunshine and some water, it has come back to life and it's looking really healthy and green again. So it's going to live with me until we go back to school. And it's really nice to have some of our school things with me. So I'm going to be looking after them really well and keeping them safe. In our book, the last thing that had happened was that the Gregg family had noticed, they'd flown past the windows of their house, and they'd noticed that all of the ducks were doing things that they normally do. So they'd had, I think the mummy duck was cooking. This duck here was looking at Mr. Gregg's gun, which he wasn't very happy about. Another one of them was asleep in William's bed, and this one was playing with Philip's electric train set. And the last thing that was said was, oh dear, said Mrs. Gregg. They've taken over our whole house. We shall never get it back. And what are we going to eat? I will not eat worms, said Philip. I would rather die. Or slugs, said William. Mrs. Gregg took the two boys under her wings and she hugged them. Don't worry, she said. I can mince it all up very fine and you won't even know the difference. Lovely slug burgers, delicious worm burgers. Ugh. Oh no, cried William. Never, said Philip. Disgusting, said Mr. Gregg. Just because we have wings, we don't have to eat bird food. We shall eat apples instead. Our trees are full of them. Come on. So off they flew to an apple tree. But to eat apples without holding it in your hands is not at all easy. Every time you try to get your teeth into it, it just pushes away. In the end, they were able to get a few small bites each, and then it began to get dark, so they all flew back to the nest and lay down to sleep. There's a challenge for you, eating an apple without using your hands. It must have been at about this time that I, back in my own house, picked up the telephone and tried to call Philip. I wanted to see if the family was all right. Hello, I said. Quack, said a voice at the other end. Who's that? I asked. Quack, quack. Philip, I said, is that you? Quack, 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 quack. Oh, stop it, I said. Then there came a very funny noise. It's a little bit like a bird laughing. I put down the telephone quickly. Oh, magic finger, I cried. What has it done to my friends? That night, while Mr. and Mrs. Gregg and Philip and William were trying to get some sleep up in the high nest, a great wind began to blow. The tree rocked from side to side, and everyone, even Mr. Gregg, was afraid that the nest would fall down. Then came the rain. It rained, and the water ran into the lovely nest, and they all got as wet as could be, and it was a bad, bad night. It looks to be a bad, bad night, actually. Wouldn't like to be in that nest up there. At last, the morning came, and with it, the warm sun. Well, said Mrs. Gregg, thank goodness that's over. I never want to sleep in a nest again. She got up and looked over the side. Help, she cried. Look down there. What is it, my love? Said Mr. Gregg. He stood up and he peeped over the side. Well, he got the surprise of his life. On the ground below them stood the 4 enormous ducks as tall as men, and 3 of them were holding guns in their hands. One had Mr. Gregg's gun, one had Philip's gun, and one had William's gun. The guns were all pointing right up at the nest. Oh, goodness. No, called out Mr. and Mrs. Gregg both together. Don't shoot, please don't shoot. Why not? Asked one of the ducks. It was the one who wasn't holding a gun. You're always shooting at us. Oh, that's not the same, said Mr. Gregg. We're allowed to shoot ducks. Who allows you? Asked the duck. Well, we allow each other, said Mr. Gregg. Oh, very nice, said the duck. Well, now we're going to allow each other to shoot you. I would have loved to see Mr. Gregg's face at that point, wouldn't you? Please, cried Mrs. Gregg. My 2 little children are up here with us. You wouldn't shoot my children. Well, yesterday you shot my children, said the duck. You shot 6 of my children. Oh dear. I'll never do it again, cried Mr. Gregg. Never, never, never. Do you really mean that? Asked the duck. I do mean it, said Mr. Gregg. I'll never shoot another duck for as long as I live. That's not good enough, said the duck. What about deer? I'll do anything you say, if you will only put down those guns, said Mr. Gregg. I'll never shoot another duck or another deer or anything else ever again. Do you give your word on that? Said the duck. I do, I will. Will you throw away your guns? Asked the duck. I'll smash them into tiny bits, said Mr. Gregg, and never again will you need to be afraid of me or my family. Very well, said the duck. You may come down now, and by the way, may I congratulate you on the nest? For a first effort, it's pretty good. Mr. and Mrs. Gregg and Philip and William hopped down out of the nest and they flew to the ground. Then all at once, everything went black before their eyes and they couldn't see. At the same time, a funny feeling came over them all and they heard a great wind blowing in their ears. I'm going to stop there. Enjoy the rest of your day. It's beautiful and sunny outside. So make sure you get out, have lots of exercise and feel that sunshine on your faces. Keep in touch. It is the Easter holidays, but we are still here. Look forward to hearing from you and I will read the next bit next time. Bye.